So this is Immoral Decisions in Video Games by Will Richards. Background. Video games have been around for quite some time now. Pong being considered one of the first, dating back to 1972, almost 52 years ago. Since then, there has been a huge increase in video game production, as well as an increase in its popularity. According to the American Psychological Association, there's been a rise of over 1 billion gamers worldwide in just the last 8 years. They also state that 90% of US children play some form of video games. When considering ages 12 through 17, that figure rises to 97%. Harvard Health also states that 97% of teenagers in the US play video games. However, 66% are reported to play mostly violent video games, being rated teen or mature for their violence. This just shows how many teenagers are already playing violent video games. So my argument is that rewarding players for making immoral or violent decisions in video games can lead to a change in their brain that wants them to make these more immoral decisions in real life the more they are rewarded. So how does this relate to the stimulus material? My first source is Moral Courage and Intelligent Disobedience by Ted Thomas. This article talks about how moral courage is really important in having intelligent disobedience, and intelligent disobedience is important to choose right from wrong. So what is intelligent disobedience? As stated by the article, intelligent disobedience requires refusing orders that are either unlawful or will produce harm. The players playing these games need intelligent disobedience when faced with these immoral dilemmas so they can choose right from wrong. My second source is Through the Tunnel by Doris Lessing. In the story, a young boy named Jeremy is building up his courage to swim through a tunnel as the name implies. No matter what, Jeremy would always come back to this tunnel and try again and again, even when it states his nose set bled so badly he turned dizzy and had to lie limply over the big rock and watched as his thick red blood oozed into the ocean. Even though Jerry kept injuring himself, he got stronger as a result and ended up finishing the swim. So this relates back to my argument because even though it was hurtful to his body, because he was rewarded for it, he kept coming back and trying again. So the game I looked at for a more modern perspective is called Red Dead Redemption 2. This game takes place in the year 1899 during the fall of the Wild West, and you're in a gang where you must run around a fictionalized version of the United States, avoiding confrontation with rival gangs and sometimes the police. You must make money for the gang to keep them safe and to keep moving from town to town. However, some of these ways would be considered immoral. Some examples are robbing people or stores, selling stolen items, debt collecting, or bounty hunting. The players are rewarded with money or items for making these immoral decisions and need intelligent disobedience when approaching these dilemmas so they can make the more moral decisions. How are teenagers impacted? According to Dr. Craig A. Anderson, a professor in the Department of Psychology at Iowa State University, exposure to violent video games is a casual risk factor for increased aggressive behavior, aggressive cognition, and can affect plus decrease empathy and pro-social behaviors in Eastern and Western countries. This mostly, according to the National Institute of Health, this is mostly affected the frontal lobe of the teenagers, which they state plays an important role in executive functions such as decision-making and stress controllability. The frontal lobe is not fully developed as a teenager, and according to the NPR, teenagers tend to make more impulsive decisions and don't make too much judgment before making decisions. Also, according to the Michigan, a counter-argument is that video games are good and can only be really used for good things. According to the Cleveland Health Clinic, video games can be educational, help with problem solving and logic skills, improve social interactions, and reduce stress. Also, according to the Michigan Youth Violence Protection Center, Although playing video games may not determine violent or aggressive behaviors, it may increase precursors to such behaviors. Video games can also be used to help with rudimentary skills with younger students in school and help make learning more fun. The final argument is that video games don't cause violence at all. According to Andrew Przitsky, Director of Research at Oxford Internet Institute, the idea of violent video games cause violence in the real world is popular, but it does not test well over time. It may increase aggression, however, most of the time it does not correspond with real world violence. My rebuttal is that the counter-argument states that video games can be used for educational purposes and help make learning fun. This is true, however, once you reach a certain age as teenagers, you tend to stop using games for educational purposes and use them more for fun. According to the National Institute of Health, teenagers are more likely to make the immoral decisions when playing more relaxed and don't have to worry about learning. According to research.com, 52% of young students use games for educational purposes. However, once they reach a certain age, usually teen years after 8th grade, they stop using games for educational purposes. Also, Andrew Przitsky mentions how playing video games only really increases aggression. However, according to Virginia Commonwealth University, violence is understood to be caused by violence is understood to be driven by negative emotions such as anger or fear, and almost all acts of violence include some form of aggression, that being about 72% of violent crimes. In conclusion, video games are becoming increasingly popular, and they have changed all throughout the years. This also means that video games have become more increasingly violent, with more immoral choices. It connects to the stimulus through the articles Moral Courage and Intelligent Disobedience by Ted Thomas and Through the Tunnel by Doris Lessing. Teenagers need to use intelligent disobedience when making moral decisions so they can avoid making the immoral decisions even if they may be pressured to do so. Also, being rewarded for making immoral decisions in video games can lead to a change where if they are rewarded for making immoral decisions in real life, they will make it. The game Red Dead Redemption 2 is a more modern take and uses immoral choices to enhance the story throughout the game. However, according to Mia Consolvo, a professor at the Department of Communication Studies, Concord University in Montreal, Canada, she states, game structures such as narratives, character design, and length can push players to act in ways that may not align with their own morals or personal beliefs. Finally, the way teenagers' brains respond to these rewards they are getting are good things, even if they mean making immoral decisions. According to the National Institute of Health, when rewarding stimuli are experienced, the dopaminergic mesolimbic system is activated which releases dopamine. This releases a good feeling in the teenagers that makes them want to experiment it more often by continuing making these decisions for rewards.
Thank you, Will. Will, what evidence did you gather that you didn't include, and why did you choose not to include it?
So one piece of evidence I decided not to include was how many violent crimes are actually caused because the person had played a bunch of violent video games in the past. And it's because I mostly wanted to focus on the immoral decisions, and my research kind of changed to more immoral decisions instead of it causing violence. And I decided to leave that out because it didn't really enhance my...
Okay. And so what information did you need that you weren't able to locate?
Some information that I wasn't able to locate was how many young students play violent video games and educational video games, because at a younger age they can play violent video games but also use educational video games. And over time, the violent video games will build up, and they'll continue playing them, and it can affect them too.
Okay, thank you.